Welcome to our vlog series on human adaptation. My name is Pippa Bailey and I'm Head of Research Innovation at Ipsos Mori. Over the next few weeks we will deliver a number of vlogs which explore how the coronavirus is impacting our behaviours across all areas of life, business, media, brands and society, and discuss how shifts we are experiencing now may evolve and shape our attitudes and behaviours in the future. We will offer some pithy and provocative food for thought by drawing on analysis from our experts across different industries and areas such as behavioural science, cultural analysis, societal trends, passive monitoring and social intelligence. Hello, welcome to this, our fourth and final vlog in the Human Adaptation series. We'll be looking at what the future of work, health, well-being and personal finance may look like after the lockdown, and, with so much time immersed in social media, what this incredibly rich data source can reveal about changes to our attitudes, priorities and ways of life. And finally, how actions taken during the crisis may impact on trust for brands, business and government into the future. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Steph and I'm a consultant here in the Trends and Futures team here at Ipsos Mori. I'm going to be using a signals analysis which looks at micro-expressions of change to look at two areas that have been particularly affected by the coronavirus, work and well-being. If you've been following our vlog series, you might be familiar with signals. In episode 2, my colleague Billy Ng talks about how new signals may accelerate change and disrupt our norms. If you haven't seen it, you should go and watch it. Today I'm going to be using these signals to frame my analysis. Coronavirus has radically changed the way we work. In the UK, one landlord has said less than 10% of its office space is being used. But will these changes persist? When lockdown ends, will we revert back to normal? We know that more flexible approaches to work may well harmonise with our existing values, but what signals are we seeing? In the world of work, signals of change fall into three main buckets. The first is digitisation. The technology used to connect remotely is getting better and becoming more widely used. One signal of this is Zoom's increasing stock price as their daily users rise from 10 to 200 million. Other companies have invested in second monitors for their quarantined workforce. This digitisation is here to stay. The physical changes people make to their work from home environments won't go away, and they'll make the barrier to entry for virtual collaboration much lower. But this digitisation can help the office too. In New York, elevators are being linked to smartphone apps so people don't need to touch the buttons, and traffic light systems to go to the toilet are being trialled. A second bucket of signals can be found around humanisation. Human beings like to personalise, and most of us make considered choices about the way we dress for work. We're now translating that same energy into our virtual environments. We've all seen Zoom have introduced a virtual background feature, but some people have taken this a step further and rearranged their furniture to create a more appealing backdrop. One bookshop is helping people do this, curating their bookshelves to impress during video calls. New Zealand's Prime Minister was praised in April for appearing on Facebook Live in a sweatshirt after having put her daughter to bed, communicating the tangible human person behind the leader. This ability to communicate not just information but personality through a digital medium is also here to stay. We know that remote workers were more likely to feel mistreated or left out. Being able to humanise your home working environment will most likely reduce the sense of alienation through fostering a sense of connection. However, we see a third cluster of signals around nostalgia. In London, over half claim they miss having a separate home and work environment. Calm Office is a new noise generator, which creates the background noises of a traditional office. People are discussing Zoom fatigue, the sense that constant screen time is draining and that remote working is causing an increase in presenteeism. Some are even recreating their daily commute by a walk around the block. These nostalgic signals demonstrate that for many, the office is an enjoyable social space and offers a sense of community and routine that's lacking from many of our lives. While some of us might be able to shape new routines which offer the same psychological benefits as the old ones, the community and the creative energy found in many offices is harder to capture. Health and wellness have also been disrupted. For many, health is taken for granted, and in the UK, healthcare was relatively accessible. Coronavirus has changed that. So which signals can point us to the direction of travel here? As with the future of work, I've looked at signals that fall into three main buckets. The first, again, is digitisation. In the UK, the NHS has rapidly pivoted in response to the coronavirus. They've adapted their practices, replacing some in-person visits with phone or video consultations. Previously, the NHS didn't have the resources to do this efficiently. Not all GP practices had access to video consultation technology. However, this is changing too. In the private sphere, digital doctors like Babylon Health have seen tremendous increases in use. But this move to digitisation also speaks to a second bucket of signals: fragmentation. The health landscape is becoming more fragmented, with multiple flexible care options becoming more normal. The two-party system of doctors and hospitals is fragmenting into a more flexible system, which may see private options like digital doctors permanently taking some of the strain off the NHS. This fragmentation is also reflected by a rise in self-care. People are investing in more specialised forms of medical technology and exploring private options for tests like the coronavirus antibody test. These signals of fragmentation may point to a future in which the relationship between doctors' digital solutions and self-administered care becomes a more equal one. The problem with this, however, can be seen in a third cluster of signals around trust. Trust is becoming increasingly high profile as misinformation around the coronavirus spreads. When governments and the World Health Organization give conflicting advice, it becomes difficult to know who to trust. Face masks epitomise this issue. Many of us don't know to what extent they can help prevent the virus. We also see coronavirus wellness scams. WhatsApp has limited people's ability to forward viral messages to try and stop this spread of misinformation. People are being asked to question the information shared by those closest to us, and we're being asked to place unprecedented trust in our governments and healthcare systems. Our personal levels of trust in medicine have become political. The future is never certain, and we know that most predictions about it are wrong. However, networking signals are a useful way of understanding the landscape of change in the present and mapping the forces that are going to shape the future. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Felicity. I'm an Associate Director in the Social Intelligence and Analytics team here at Ipsos, and I'm going to be taking you through some of the ways that we can use social and search data to understand changing consumer behaviours. By social, we're really just talking about social media content, so anything from your mainstream social media sites like Twitter, Facebook and Instagram to specialist forums or comments and news articles. It's all social data. And by search, we really just mean the things that people are typing into Google. So by now, I'd say it's pretty well established that the last few months have seen society move to a predominantly digital way of communicating. This might be directly with family or colleagues over Zoom, or posting about your activities or reignited hobbies online for your social sphere. Either way, the combination of things that people post on social or search in Google leave a trail of behavioural breadcrumbs that, when explored at scale, can start to give a good indication of change. The beauty of unstructured data like this is that it can be examined and dissected in so many different ways, revealing multiple nuances from the same data set. Here I'm going to briefly cover just two of the ways that we might start to unpick this kind of data and uncover behavioural shifts moving forwards. So the first is using behavioural or motivational frameworks, and the second will look at image analytics. So let's start with our frameworks. In session 3, we heard from Amy about the various motivations that people are experiencing throughout the course of the pandemic, built upon the Syncytium framework, Ipsos's validated compass to understanding human motivations. In session 2, we also heard from Colin the ways in which we can use Ipsos's MAPS behavioural change framework. This framework is used as a foundation to define consumer behaviours and diagnose what drivers and barriers impact those behaviours. From this, we can start to develop effective behaviour change activities. So let's take a look at the MAPS framework. Here we've taken a very streamlined version of the framework to showcase just a few examples of how it can be applied to social data. We can either look at generic attitudinal language in each dimension, or we can apply it to category-led conversations. So looking at the motivation dimension at a generic level, we can see social and search language around consumer fears and concerns, or conversation around drive to do something, weight loss or healthier eating perhaps. This is especially true of search data, where the anonymity of search helps reveal the deepest concerns that people might not be willing to share elsewhere. Inability, people may share or seek practical advice, or share their experience of doing something for the first time, maybe their first sourdough starter. The social dimension might expose some of the pressures that individuals feel or think that they face, a dimension that's likely to have evolved quite considerably since the start of the pandemic. These general language examples are interesting, but it starts to get more meaningful when you apply this to category examples. So take the world of health and well-being. The looming tension between the motivation to exercise and the cost of gym membership, now that home workouts have become the norm, is already appearing in search and social data, as we see increasing searches for online HIIT workouts or yoga mats or things like, is gym membership really worth it? Likewise, with personal finances, there are broad concerns over the collapse of banks, to people wondering if they can pay their rent with a credit card, or concerns over eviction. For many, people's financial situations have been disordered, and with globally impacted economies, financial service providers need to rapidly unearth up-to-date consumer concerns to best deliver against them. For any brand, we need to be diving into these tension points, these verbal hints at change, to understand how best to provide the reassurance and services needed in a changing world. So now let's look briefly at image analytics. I won't go into too much detail here, other than to highlight the importance of also considering non-verbal cues from social data. The phrase, "a picture is worth 1,000 words," is so true, especially when habits are changing so quickly. Consumers are pretty adept at crafting verbal narratives of their experiences, and they often parrot the language of their echo chambers, which is still useful. But it's only by looking at non-verbal cues through image analytics that we can begin to unearth a hidden tier of behaviours, less relevant to mention, maybe in the eyes of the consumer. For brands competing in the same space, tapping into these second-tier behaviours may stand you in good stead in the long run. Equally, can we monitor volumes of particular visual cues to indicate when a shift has become the norm? Are the number of hashtag locktail posts on the decline? Or are the number of outdoors photos rising? All of these can give huge hints as to the velocity of behaviour change without ever speaking directly to a consumer. So, to summarise, people have moved digital, and it's an insight channel that we can't ignore. By using our social intelligence capabilities alongside established frameworks and cultural or category experts, we can begin to understand shifting priorities and consumer behaviours at scale and speed when it counts. Thank you.
So it's becoming clear that as we went into lockdown, it was a difficult step we all needed to take, but it was a straightforward one that we were able to take to manage the risk of COVID-19. As we think about opening up and going back to the regular behaviours, there's a huge range of new uncertainties that we face. This idea is reflected in some recent work called Lockdown TV, which was mentioned in an earlier vlog. What we've been doing there is looking at diaries kept by 12 households in the UK as we go through the COVID-19 pandemic. What we see in the most recent wave of that is that consumers are excited about life beyond lockdown. However, they recognize that brands have a duty of care as we come out of these lockdown measures. So they trust brands are going to take measures to ensure safety, and they expect some transparency in what measures are put in place. It's clear as we move out of lockdown that organizations and brands play an essential role in helping us manage the uncertainties that we face. At the heart of this is the trust that consumers will place in them. Now, the question is, how do brands build trust? Well, philosopher Philip Petit has outlined 3 different levels of trust, each of which incorporates higher levels of buy-in from the trustee. At the most foundational level is basic trust. Now, this is whether the other party is competent and reliable. So this is often what we think about trust, and it's essentially, do we expect the other to behave in a consistent and coherent way? Building off of this most basic level of trust is active trust. Now, this is whether we expect the other party to behave responsibly. Are they open and transparent about what they do? And are they well led? And so this is really about, does the other party have your well-being in mind? And are they able to conduct their affairs in a way that meets your well-being? Moving beyond the active level of trust is interactive trust. So this is more about whether you as the party is willing to reveal your vulnerabilities to the other and rely on them to behave in your best interest. So at the heart of this is whether the other party shares your core values, and whether you can trust them with your vulnerabilities and act in your best intentions and not take advantage of you. Now, thinking about these different levels of trust, we can see how brands are reflecting these levels as they respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, at the basic level, we certainly saw a number of challenges faced by many organizations as COVID-19 took hold. With shops being hit by unexpected levels of demands and services being disrupted by staff shortages, it is understandable that there are some difficulties in meeting this level of trust. But as we move out of lockdown, we can expect some different types of challenges here as well. Some businesses may be fundamentally changed in order to ensure social distancing requirements are respected. Also, governments are going to be expected to develop entirely new systems to help deal with the risks that COVID-19 present. Now, meeting this basic level will involve some time and some effort, but once this level has been met, we now can think about a more active level of trust. At the more active level of trust, we're seeing a range of brands being responsive to the changing environment created by COVID-19. They're seeing how our lives are changing and reflecting this in how they communicate to us and how they interact with us. They're helping us develop new habits and routines and helping to reflect the shared experiences that we're all going through in this new changing environment. Finally, at interactive trust, we can certainly see that this is a time of huge uncertainty. And there's some indications that individuals are seeking out not just trusted sources, but trustworthy sources. So looking at the BBC and the New York Times, we're certainly seeing a number of people going to those as trustworthy sources in order to get their information and news. But we can also look at brands that are enacting in the same way. For example, BrewDog has developed a Kickstart collective, which offers a way to restart the hospitality industry. So they're sharing of resources, sharing of ideas in order to help to build a collective that will be able to respond effectively and restart the hospitality industry in this very difficult time. We can also look at leaders in government that through their actions can build higher levels of trust and trustworthiness and engender greater engagement in their citizens in order to respond collectively to help manage the spread of COVID-19. For example, Dr. Amy Acton, who's the director of the Ohio Department of Health, is a leader that's been lauded as displaying these characteristics that builds a trustworthy relationship with her citizens. So she shows brutal honesty, shows her vulnerability in many of the communications she gives, thereby showing that she's a trusted leader and can be seen as one of the reasons why there's a much lower levels of COVID-19 spread compared to other states in the US that aren't led by such leaders. So as illustrated here, we're now moving out of the extreme measures that were placed on us to help manage the first wave of COVID-19. As we move out of these extreme measures, we're collectively moving into a new way of living. As illustrated here as the dance, we fluidly adapt and adjust our social behaviors as we see changes in the transmission rates. However, in doing this, there's a huge amount of uncertainty that we face in stepping into this dance. But as we look at brands and organizations through the lens of trust, we can see how we can work together more collaboratively and put trust in each other in order to build a more resilient way of managing COVID-19 and the broader social and economic impacts it's created.
We are constantly learning and adapting about how we are currently engaging with people, customers, consumers, the public. With heightened emotion and sensitivity, we all need to act with thought and consideration for positive outcomes. Thank you for listening.